So for today, as I mentioned earlier, our topic is on designing a voice of customer program to power your future. If you think about this, right, a true customer-centric organization really embraces customer feedback, sentiment, learnings, sharings, and the like. And they use that in a way that really helps drive every function across the business. Your customers are probably going to be your strongest lifeline to understanding what direction you should be headed as a company from a product standpoint, how to enhance your processes to create a better experience, and how do you take that information and that feedback and really make it actionable. So my name, if you haven't met me before, if you've not joined one of our boot camps, my name is Kristi Faltorusso. I am currently the Vice President of Customer Success at ClientSuccess, and I'm going to lead us today in our session on VOC. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. So first, I just want to talk a little bit more about what a voice of customer program is. So a VOC program or voice of customer program is really a strategy that enables a company to collect, analyze, report, and act on customer feedback. And those steps are really, really critical because a true VOC program is not a VOC program if you're not doing all four of those things. And so, I've heard a lot of folks say, well, we're doing NPS or we're sending out NPS surveys, so that's our voice of customer program. And I'll tell you, a lot of organizations who are, using NPS as one form of solicited customer feedback, that's great. But a lot of folks aren't really taking the time to delve deep into that data to really understand thematic points that their customers are sharing and really taking action and putting together a plan around the insights that they're finding. A lot of times it's a number, it's a vanity metric in some companies where they don't action it effectively. So VOC is not NPS. NPS is one small component of a well-structured, well-orchestrated VOC program. So we're going to talk about all the different ways you can collect data, where you can find those insights, and how to take action on that. So what I want to talk about a little bit is, to get started, right, in an organization, hopefully, like many of ours, our customers should be at the core, right? And if you think about it, your customers are who are powering your product innovation, right? So from you're getting feedback on the product, right? They're always giving you, insights into how it would be more optimal to support their workflows or what they would like to see, or features or functionality, right? They're giving you insights into the market, their operating model, and their business needs. And that information is super critical, right? So again, if you're taking this information and using it effectively, this is going to be core. Your customers are core to that product innovation. The next thing there is, it's your marketing strategy. Marketers, if they're smart, they're leveraging the customers very effectively, whether they're doing this to understand those successful workflows and those outcomes and just unique ways that customers are using the product today. They use that information to help articulate to prospects what's possible, right? And that's what people buy into, is the possibility of success that they can have. And so your marketing team should be using your customers to power how they market the value of your solution, right? It's not about features and function. It's what you can do to drive your business forward. So again, customers, core to those two elements. The next is revenue growth. Your customers, obviously, hopefully, many of them are subscribing to your product, which means that they're paying for it. But in addition to that, customers, understanding how they're successful and what they're doing, using their feedback, this could be contributing to not only stronger retention, but hopefully growth as well. And so you should hopefully, if you've got your customers at the core of your business and how you're operating today, should be that catalyst for future growth long-term. And the last one there is, your customers are your biggest sales engine, right? We've talked about this all the time, right? Your customers and word of mouth, that's who's out there spreading the word of your business, the value they get, sometimes the frustration that they've had, right? So they're not only saying the great things, they're saying the not so great things also. And you should really be privy to what they're saying and understanding that. And the VOC program will help you do that. And that's why it is so critical, right? It's going to help you understand what you're doing really well, what you're not doing well, what you should be doing, how you should change, and what they need and expect from you as partners. And so again, making sure that you understand that this is going to power your business if you think about this the right way. And those customers are at the core of that. So when you think about a customer-centric organization, because a lot of people like to say, yes, we're customer-centric, but they don't necessarily behave that way. think about some of the core teams and how they're using customer insights and data to influence the processes that they're building, right? The redesign, the rearticulation of things, how they're enhancing, parts of their programs and their efforts and their processes. If it's not with the customer in mind, you may not be as customer-centric as you think. So this is just one illustration here to help paint that picture and to help support the fact that these insights, these learnings are critical to your long-term success. So how do you capitalize on a VOC program? I don't know that I've ever been in an organization who didn't rally around this idea, but I do know that there are some companies who are less educated on how or what to do with the information that they're getting from their customers. And so I like to just have a story that always says, well, think about all the ways that this is going to propel us into the future. So the first thing there is, if you've got a strong voice of customer program, this is going to be driving your product roadmap. I know here at ClientSuccess, our product team is speaking with our customers daily. Our SVP of product is on calls with customers. In fact, he's on a call with a customer right now with Dave. And so they're just really speaking with our customers all the time. They want to hear what's working well. They want to get feedback as they think about their innovation. And all that feedback is critical to powering that roadmap. So if you are capturing those insights from your customers, and we'll talk about the various ways that you can, this will be the thing that powers your product. And at the end of the day, that's what we all are, right? We're product companies. We're hoping that our customers purchase our solution to solve their business problems, to drive those outcomes. And this is key to that, right? The product is what powers it. The next is renewals. I cannot tell you how valuable insights and learnings have been throughout the customer journey to help us understand risk and opportunity. And renewals are just the same, right? I know that customers are going to give me insights and visibility, whether solicited or unsolicited, into how they're feeling about their intent to continue the partnership. So if you want to strengthen retention with your customers, this is a great program to leverage to get there. The next is loyalty. At the end of the day, customers want to feel heard. They want to know that they're not only being heard because it's part of your program, but that you're taking action on that, right? That their insights and that their contributions and their sentiment and their feedback is all extremely valuable. That will develop loyalty with your customers, especially if you're making the changes based off of their feedback. So if you're thinking about building those customers for life, this is a great program to help facilitate that long term. Next is relationships. I can tell you that a lot of the great relationships I have with our customers here and at other organizations as well has been based on my strong desire to listen, learn, and respond. And I say it that way because that is exactly what I've done, right? I solicit feedback or even unsolicited feedback. I do the same thing, right? I listen and I lean in. I make sure I understand. And then I make sure that I put some wheels in motion to take action on that. And that has really strengthened the relationship with us. It helps to build trust. It helps build credibility, and it helps strengthen the partnership overall. And so if you're somebody who is looking to strengthen and foster better relationships with your customers, which if you are in a customer success role or would like to be, this is a core component of that. So this is a great avenue to help facilitate those relationships. And even, getting access to folks you hadn't spoken to before. For example, oftentimes we'll reach out to customers who are end users, and those might not be the folks that we're speaking with on a daily basis or admins or our leaders, but the folks that are using the product to just understand what are they like? How does our product make their lives easier? Or, on the flip side, what are some challenges that they've identified? Again, this is an avenue to build new relationships, foster and strengthen the ones that you've already have. Next is growth. We talked about that, but if you have data and insights about how your customers are feeling, what they're doing, successes that they've had, this could be an avenue to feed that pipeline to understand where there is a high propensity for growth. And so we've used insights, again, probably less here and more in other organizations, where we've used that to facilitate areas of opportunity. We knew that customers who behaved a certain way, did certain things, said certain things, and gave us feedback had a higher likelihood of wanting to grow. And so we understood that the feedback given at certain times would be the catalyst of that. So using that information strategically will help you also figure out, when is it a good time for us to reach out to our customers to have those additional conversations. Now, that's not the only way to go and feed that pipeline, but again, it is a helpful one because maybe reaching out to customers who are dissatisfied, not happy, not getting value, frustrated with the product, maybe that's not the best place to start. This also helped us really build our referral network. So, understanding that our customers are going to be the pipeline for sales, they are hopefully going to be second order revenue. So that's, customers who repurchase, meaning, maybe an executive leaves one company, they go somewhere else, they bring you along because they've had such a great experience. So again, if you're using this to build those relationships, hear their feedback, take those actions, build that trust, build that loyalty, hopefully you're also building the referral network in a long-term basis as well. And last is case studies. So this isn't the only value they get out of this in terms of an advocacy program, but I really do like this because I've understood from data that we've used through VOC programs, where we have really great, strong stories that we can capitalize on. And so case studies has been a great avenue for us to leverage that. And the VOC program has always uncovered these new areas of opportunity. As a CSM, we're having so many conversations with our customers. You're talking about all different types of things, right? It could be their strategy, it could be in the product things, but it's not always easy to figure out, or maybe you don't know in that moment, is today the day, right? Is this customer at a place where we can actually put them in touch with marketing and document their story so we can share it with the world? But I can say the VOC program has opened us up to customers who would be willing, able, and the right ones to tell that story. So again, case studies could be another thing you could take away from this program in terms of how you can capitalize on it. So again, these are not the only things. There's a ton of value and upside to running an effective VOC program, but these are some of the elements that I've seen come out of them that have really helped drive our business forward and have always made a great case for us staffing resources, time, and effort behind an effectively run program. So what are some of the elements of an effective voice of customer program? So I kind of stated this earlier, right? The first thing you need to do is you need to listen. And when I say listen, this could be if you're using surveys or you're using some other mechanism, that's fine, right? It's how you're capturing that data. Think about this through solicited and unsolicited. Wherever you're capturing it from, that's fine. As long as you're capturing that data in a way that will allow you to use it to do the next activity, which is to analyze it. A big part of how we analyze the data and what we do with it is we're really looking for thematic things that come up, because at the end of the day, all customers are going to have different wants, needs, feelings about your solution. Of course, everyone wants it to be bespoke and manage to all of their unique needs. And of course, while we'd love to build that, it doesn't always work that way. But if you analyze the data, you'll be able to find thematic things that come up. So I'll give you an example. When I joined ClientSuccess, I tried to meet with as many of our customers as possible. And I'm still actively having those discussions with some, but I tried to meet with as many as possible. And I asked the same questions almost in every conversation I had so that I could use that data to analyze it. And what I did is I found 3 to 4 things that were critical for me to pay close attention to and really address and make some changes around in order to enhance the experience for my customers and to drive a better outcome for them in terms of how they were using our solution. So I was able to analyze it even in that forum, right? This is now me interviewing our customers and capturing that data. So solicited, but not through a mechanism that would be easily quantifiable. This really required me to go through all of my notes and figure out, well, what were the patterns? What were the things I kept hearing? And that really powered how we've rethought about customer success at ClientSuccess. So analyzing that information is critical, but remember, you've got to look for those themes, those patterns and those insights, because that'll be how you'll be able to make the biggest impact as you're thinking about change and the future of your business. The next element is reporting. And when I say reporting, this isn't just creating a document with all these insights and then tucking it away in your Google Drive somewhere and hiding it. When I talk about this, it's pulling that data together, but then more importantly, socializing it. Now, I know that there's a ton of folks that heavily adopt Slack. We're one of those in our organization. We use Slack for everything. In fact, our NPS program, when it comes through, goes directly to a Slack channel. So that's one way that we disseminate that information in a timely manner so that everyone can see what's happening. Now, there's tons of other ways that you can do this. This is by far not the only one, but it's you're responsible for coming up with creative ways to making sure that all that information gets to the right stakeholders in your organization. Because if you don't do that, you won't be able to do step 4, which is to take action on that. Now, once you've figured out thematically, okay, here's the things that we need to do, and you've got everyone's buy-in, you've circulated that, report, and you've gotten visibility on what's important, you've got to figure out, okay, where do we go next, right? What are those next steps? What are the actions that we're going to take? And one of the things that we did is always make sure that we devise a plan. And so if I'm using my example, right, I told you I came on board as a new leader, I interviewed all these customers, I put together this this kind of thematic report of, okay, here's the 7 things I heard. And I did hear, I would say there was a top 3 for sure, but it came down to 7 things that I felt were critical for me to enhance in order for my customers to get what they needed from the partnership or get what they deserved or expected. And so, it wasn't just about that. I had to take action on it. So little by little over the past few months, I've been rolling out new programs. As I do, I circulate and share those with our customers just to let them know, hey, based on your feedback, here are some of the changes that we've been making. And while some of those things take longer to implement and to enhance, the things that we can move quickly on, we make sure that we are doing so and then communicating that out broadly. So it's not just also about taking the action, it's making sure that the folks that gave that feedback, that they know that you've done something with it, or that you intend to do something with it, or you're working on something, right? Because it shouldn't just stop on you taking the action. It's that full circle kind of close the loop mentality that's critical to making sure that that feedback was valuable, right? People don't only just want to be heard, but they want to know that you're doing something with it. And that's the best way to address it, is to take it, package it up, and put together a plan and socialize on it early and often. So now that we know that the 4 core elements, right? This is what makes up a VOC program. Let's talk a little bit about where you can find that content. Now, I'll tell you, obviously, I talk about interviews, and I kind of put a customer-ish icon there in the center because that was my version of that, right? I think that like in your engagements with your customers, you're speaking with them on a regular basis, whether it's a formal interview or your regular engagement, there's a lot of information that will come from those discussions, and you need to make sure that you're using it with that same mindset. But let's start over here to the left. So first thing is communities. I know, and I'm going to use this, not every industry has a community like customer success has a community. Not only are we a community on networks like LinkedIn, there are so many fantastic communities that have been built, communities like Gain, Grow, Retain, and others, where customers are sharing their feedbacks, their thoughts, and it's important to make sure that you're dialed into that, right? You're listening to them in the places that they're having conversations about you. And it doesn't mean that you need to go jump in and chime in, but you need to listen, right? Observe and hear. So that way, if there's something that's being talked about or communicated, you can do something about it, good, bad, or otherwise, right? It's your opportunity to hear shared sentiment and learn more from your customers. Another area there is support. I'm really big on this, and I know that it's difficult for a lot of organizations to operationalize this, but support is probably one of the main lines to this unsolicited feedback. Think about that, right? You've got customers who are coming to your support team with challenges, obstacles, issues, bugs, and the like, right? And they're sharing either their frustration or, there's documentation that they can't find or they don't know how to do something. The information that you can capture from support is it's phenomenal. We've enhanced training and enablement programs as a result of it, because we found that a lot of the support tickets that were coming through were tied to our inability to effectively train and enable. This didn't require us to troubleshoot or fix a bug or create a new product. It was, our customers, they don't know what they don't know. So using those insights to figure out how you can tackle that and make it a plan. I realized our knowledge base needed some enhancements, right? We needed to richen and deepen and make some of the content more current, right? A lot of questions that were coming through and a lot of the frustration was they couldn't help themselves, right? So I'm not going to walk you through all of the things that I have found in my support queue, but I would definitely encourage you, if you are a success leader, if you're not over support, go connect with your leader over there and see if you can get access to some of the data and insights that are being captured in the support tickets, because I'm sure you will find a wealth of knowledge. Also on the support front, just to kind of plug some other things, there are a few, I won't say a lot, there are a few tools that use AI and machine learning to really understand what's being said in support tickets and kind of funneling that up so that way you can go and analyze it more effectively. So just know that there are tools to help you so you don't need to do it super manually. Happy to talk about that offline if you're interested in hearing about some of those. The next is social. I'm a big fan of this. I encourage my team, anytime we bring a new customer on board or anytime they inherit a new customer, maybe through a transition, or maybe they've just joined the organization and they've taken on a new customer, add them on LinkedIn, go follow their company on LinkedIn, go, see if they're tweeting about things. I wouldn't say go to any of their personal channels, probably TikTok, Instagram, not necessary in a professional setting, but you get the point, right? There is conversations, there's information being shared on social channels, and there's a lot that you can learn there as well, right? What are they talking about? What are they sharing? What are their challenges? How are they feeling? What successes are their business having? There's just a lot you can garner from there. So paying attention to, again, what's being said, said, and maybe sometimes what's not being said on social could be a helpful avenue. The fourth one there is reviews. I'm sure many of you have or are familiar with sites like G2 or Capterra that have reviews on different softwares across multitude of categories. There's a lot you can learn there as well. If you've got customers who are leaving reviews, hopefully a lot of those customers are providing honest feedback and they're not just all 5-star reviews. That would be a little fishy. But hopefully you're finding, a lot of insights and learnings, because they do ask and solicit things like, what are the pros? What are the cons? What do you like? What are the things that you've achieved with a solution? And I think that's a really great place to go and review what your customers are saying, right? They are giving you a review. This is, again, maybe unsolicited by your business. Maybe it is, maybe you're part of a program, but the feedback that your customers are sharing on those review sites is really powerful. So make sure that you've got a way to share and socialize that internally as well. I know here at ClientSuccess, we actually do a review of G2 every week in our town hall. So we go to look to see what our customers are saying, good, bad, ugly, and we capture some of those sound bites to socialize that, to make sure that we're paying attention. And that not only are we paying attention, but we try to figure out how do we address some of the cons or the challenges that our customers are having. And then for other customers, if we know that some folks are being really successful doing certain things, how do we encourage other customers to do those same things if it's working for them and they have similar or shared goals? So just using that data really to enhance the experience you're creating for your customers. Again, you can learn a lot, making sure you disseminate that. Last is surveys. Surveys, super powerful, right? We'll start with NPS. NPS is the most basic. It's probably the most commonly known. And so I talk about this just because in terms of getting buy-in and trying to orchestrate something from the ground up is a great place to start, because you probably don't need to do a ton of education. You probably don't need to buy an entirely new tech stack to support it. And, folks will understand why you want to do it. So I always say NPS is an easy peasy one. So if you're not doing something with NPS, I highly encourage you to do so. Just not because I don't use it as a vanity metric. Like, there's nobody who will know what our NPS score is, because I'm not socializing that. It's not important what the score is. It's the insights and the learnings that I'm gathering from our customers and how we take action and what we do. And I'll talk to you a bit about that. But there's other things like your CSAT, your CES surveys, right? So you could just be doing an annual survey. You could do something post-sale, you could do one post-onboarding. There's a ton of different points in the customer journey where you could be launching a survey. And those are great, easy ways to collect and quantify the customer's feedback. So again, that would be a solicited way of doing it, but really great in terms of capturing insights and learnings. And last is recorded calls. I know this is definitely one where I don't know that I've seen a ton of technology doing a great job with AI and machine learning and kind of analyzing all this. If you guys do know any tools that do that, though, I'd be super interested in hearing all about them. But if you think about even like a tool like Gong or Chorus, who are capturing that and they're transcribing those conversations, having the ability to understand what customers are talking about, not even in that conversation, but socializing that, sharing that, more broadly and capturing the insights from that. I think it's a really interesting avenue and probably not one that's been heavily capitalized on in terms of a VOC program. But again, I think that, your customers are saying things all the time to you. And if you had a way to capture every single sound bite and snippet, but then also be able to share that with other folks in the business, I think that could really help to make sure that everyone was hearing what your customers were saying. And I think that's what we're all trying to accomplish with this program and others. Okay, so let's talk about the maturation of your VOC program. I've kind of broken down like 3 stages. Now, again, these are my stages. They don't need to be, this is not the end all be all to a VOC program. But what I will say is I've broken this down to 3 different stages to say, out the gate, you do not need a very, very comprehensive VOC program. You could be starting with just, like I said, a simple NPS survey, but it's what you do with it and how you manage it that makes the difference. So let's talk about this. So the way that I've built this slide here is to suggest the initial stage is the initial stage. And then every next stage is the stage before it and then some, right? So think about like if you're buying software, which I'm sure we all have, you're going to see like you get this with your basic and then you get basic plus all these others. This is how I've designed it. So let's talk through the initial stage. Out the gate, you don't need to be overthinking what you do here, right? The VOC program, again, at its core is just, it's a strategic way to capture feedback and share learnings. So what I've said in the initial stage that I think is really helpful is feedback from surveys and NPS, right? Having a way to capture that data Like I said, I'm big on starting small. NPS usually gets really easy buy-in. Not everyone loves it. Some people hate it. That's okay too. But start small. Figure out one way that you can go and capture some information from your customers that you want to start to act on. Next is put together some basic reporting analytics. You do not need a BI tool to go and analyze 50 different responses you're going to get from the survey, right? You need something that's going to enable you to say, okay, great. Here, we're hearing patterns of these words that are most commonly used, or these are some of the frustrations, or, even doing it manually, depending on the volume that you have is possible. So you don't need to over-engineer these things. You don't need to make sure that you've got countless hours of resources and data scientists committed to this project at this point, right? This is just take the data, look at it, find some points that are interesting to socialize and share. Make sure that you've got data to support systemic issues. So this is going back to those themes or patterns, because then you want to do that last point, which is focusing on recovery. And so I think this is really important because, again, this is your act step. So I think it's important to just make sure that you're kind of doing these things and then making sure you're putting together a plan. It doesn't need to be a full court press. We're going to go change every single thing we do. It could be we're going to take action on one thing, right? The one thing we heard from 50% or more of our customers was X, and we're going to go do something about X. And the next time we deploy this survey, we're going to look for that next one thing that we saw, that we heard, and making sure that we've got a plan there. So this is really important, again, just to kind of articulate, this is your initial stage. Doesn't need to be really complicated. So start small, start somewhere. Now, when you move into an advanced stage, now you're going to start to consider unsolicited feedback collection, right? So I talked about feedback from surveys or NPS, and that's solicited, right? You're asking your customers to give you some feedback. In an advanced stage, you're going to look at unsolicited data. And this could be some of the other channels that I talked about, right? So it could be through support, it could be through communities, through social, through G2, if you're not soliciting that feedback, right? And they're giving it and you're analyzing it. So just finding avenues where you're going to go and hear from your customers and using that data. Analysis of unstructured data. So again, pulling in other types of data, making sure that you've got integrated data sources. This is going to be important as you think about a fully built out program, but how do you integrate all the different places that you're capturing that data into one system so that way you can start to better and easier, that's not a word. And so you can capture that information and do something with it. You're going to need to start to create formal processes around how do you operationalize your VOC program, because now at this stage, you're going to be collecting a lot more feedback, which means you're going to need to be taking probably more action. You're going to need to be responding to customers. You're going to need to be reaching out with some gratitude, making sure that they know that their voice was heard. So creating those formal processes is very, very important. The next one there is executive engagement and support. At a certain level, hopefully your executive stakeholders are now involved in this program. And it could be that they've got their own outreach as part of an orchestrated process, but they're really bought in. And not only are they engaging in the program, but they're helping and supporting it. And that support could look different at every company. So I'm not going to talk about, hey, support only looks like this from an executive. I've had some executives who, the minute a survey response comes in, they're all over it. They're responding, they're reaching out to the customer, they're setting up calls. And then I have others who are using that data and they're using it to orchestrate their leadership conversations, right? And so every leader is going to be different in terms of how they're involved. And I think different businesses at different stages are going to look a little different as well, but getting their support and getting them engaged is going to be critical. Role-based reporting. Now, this is interesting because, again, I don't want to say that not all feedback is the same, but starting to cluster out that feedback into different buckets. What you're hearing from leaders versus what you're hearing from end users versus what you're hearing from admins. If I'm using that as a very bare bones, basic example of some categorization, you might want to start to theme out the insights that you're hearing across different groups. So segmenting that. It could be role-based. It could be, other ways that you think segmentation is going to be critical to you. Could be based on industries, right? So feedback from our e-commerce versus, retail versus this versus that. All those different industries might have thematic feedback that's going to show up because they've got different use cases or similar use cases. And we want to make sure that you're understanding those holistically. You're going to need a centralized team at some point. You can imagine, right? I've named, just off the top of my head, there was 6-7 places where we were capturing feedback. I'm sure if I asked everyone in this chat, name something I haven't listed, we'd get a whole bunch more. There's a lot of places you can capture insights and feedback from customers. So at some point, you might need resources allocated to this program. I will say in the past, I've had folks that sat in customer marketing roles be, in charge of this. Does it mean they run every step in the process? It means that they're orchestrating it internally for us. And I have found that that was a great resource to allocate to it. Perhaps you have someone who sits in customer ops or some other operations role in your business who could take that over, or eventually get to a place where you've got VOC as a standalone function, which would be in the mature state, which we'll talk about. But again, you need some point of ownership. And then you need to focus on that collaborative feedback. And when I say collaborative feedback, it's taking feedback not only from your customers and that feedback that you're collecting and you're listening from, but then also allowing your employees to lean in as well. I think it's really important to understand that your employees have a POV, and probably a really strong one at that. And it could be about the product, the processes, things that are working, not working. And so now at this advanced stage, you're not only taking your customer feedback, but you're taking in employee feedback to also build into that, because now you might have additional or amplified voices supporting certain things that need to be addressed. So that would be the advanced stage, right? So it's initial plus advanced, will get you advanced. Now, if we move to the mature state, this is a more advanced program. And I will tell you, I've not personally orchestrated a very mature program. I think VOC in many instances is still very nascent in terms of how people are thinking about it. And while we all know it's important, I think getting the resources behind it, it just kind of falls a little bit lower on the list of priorities when we all have so much to do. But I can say, if we think about this as a core driver of those business outcomes, right? We talk about retention and growth and advocacy. Since those are the three things that we really care about, and this supports that, maybe we should be giving a little bit more attention. So, but let's talk about the mature state here. So when you get to a mature state of your VOC program, you're going to think about full integration of all data types. Now, this is not just some integrated data sources. This is a full integrated program. It is not easy to get to that point. Hopefully you've got a lot of things that have access to APIs, you can bring in information, but you've got to have a repository that can support all that data as well. So you've got to really think creatively about, okay, what tools are we going to use? How are we going to make that a reality? Now, at some point, you're also going to have to allocate dev or tech resources, right? Somebody with higher technical aptitude than me to go and pull all that together into a single source of truth. But that's really what it's going to require at that level and that stage. The next is advanced frameworks for project optimization. This is not just about the processes that you create on how you're going to manage that data, but now this is also how do we continue to evolve and optimize those processes. This is going to be an ever-changing program, just like your customer journey and some other elements of programs that you've run. So making sure that you understand how to do this and investing those resources. I'm really big on trying to figure out how do we use technology to help us scale. And so sophisticated machine learning, AI, those things I think are critical. So making sure that if you have the ability to have some either AI or ML help you understand those themes, those patterns, using that to do so, I think will definitely help you at that mature state, because you are now processing so much more information than you were before. Remember in the initial stage, I was like, you could do some of this manually and it would be fine. You've got 50 responses, go look at it, see what it says. Obviously, when you're at a mature stage, you're collecting so much different information from so many different places. Manual review of that is just not going to work. So you've got to figure out how do we use things like ML and AI. Independent tech stack. At that point, you probably should have, its own technology to power this, right? You shouldn't be trying to hack together a few tools and say, oh, well, I use Qualtrics for this and I use SurveyMonkey for that. And I've got, this is my VOC program, right? You're going to have a centralized tech stack that is going to support not only how you're collecting that data, how you're analyzing that data, and then how you're going to go act on it, right? So I would even think like project management capabilities at some point. So really thinking through what are all the technology resources. I know I see Tammy dreaming of a centralized tech stack. I know it's like, it feels so foreign of a concept, but we'll get there. But making sure that you do have a tech stack there to support it. The next is culture and mindset shift. So this is probably, if I had to say, probably the toughest thing to get around. Now, again, I know that we all dream of working in organizations that are customer centric and not only say it, but live it and do it. But when you get to this mature stage, at this point, you have invested money and resources and time. This is a big program for you, right? If you've gotten to this stage, this is huge. And so what I would say here is like, you've got to have global buy-in across the whole business. When I say global, just your whole business. If you're not a global company, I don't mean like global in every country, but you've got to have buy-in across your company that supports this. that operates around it, that doesn't make decisions without considering it. And that's really where it comes in, you know, in a big way. And so if you look at that the second to last bullet there, said VOC consideration, all process and design stages. So again, think about that. Imagine your sales team didn't do anything without thinking about customer feedback or using data and insights that they've captured to drive their behaviors. Or think about if your marketing team only did the things or kind of built their programs around feedback and insights that were gathered from customers directly. Or even how you design your customer facing organizations, whether that be support or services or onboarding or success, right? You've got now all of this data at your fingertips, and how you use it across your business is going to change your trajectory. And last is customer active participation. I'm really big on this and supporting it. I think that your customers need to be pulled into the process. It's not enough to just say we've captured their information, so that's their involvement, but really bring them into the program. In fact, you know, the programs that I've deployed definitely probably haven't gotten to like my full optimized version and vision of what I'd like it to be. We have been able to pull customers in to lean in and say, like, you know, here's what we're hearing. Here's the data. Here's what we're analyzing. Like, here's what we want to do. What do you think about this? Right. So even getting their support and buy-in before we go full court press and changing everything, getting their validation on things, right? Getting them to lean in and share more feedback about that. But whatever and however you want to engage them, I think having their full active participation goes a long way. So that's how I'm thinking about the maturation of this. Like I said, start here, start somewhere. You don't need to over-engineer it. It could be forever before you get to a mature stage, but it's always good to have something that you're working towards and that you understand what you're building. So let's talk about like building something and starting small. Again, I'm a big fan of just like progress over perfection. Do something, it's better than nothing. If I do something today that I didn't do yesterday, I'm on the right track. So if we're starting with NPS, and I want to start really small here, establishing an NPS campaign that can be sent out to your customers. Again, insert survey name, whatever. It doesn't need to be NPS. It could be any survey that you think is going to be valuable, but start with a solicited campaign, because this will help to bring in that information in a manageable way to your business. If you start with unsolicited feedback, it is going to be difficult to capture. It's going to require more resources, more time. And so you really need to make sure that you're starting with something that you can control, that you can manage. So I'm using NPS as my example, but you can use any survey or way, you know, that you want to capture that to start. The second is you've got to consider your cadence. You know, some folks, they'll send out NPS once a year, and that's fine and well, and that's good. Other organizations, they will go and they will build out a cadence that looks like it's going out every quarter, or maybe they do it twice a year. Whatever the case may be, figure out, okay, well, here's the cadence. And now, why I say this is important, because it's like, so what, who cares? Kristi, I'm going to send it out today. I'm going to build this program that you told me there's 4 steps. Why are you introducing a 5th element? And I'm saying this because you want to be able to create your baseline. And so if I know what I'm focusing on today, in this case, right, if I'm focused on, you know, we're going to do this quarterly, I know what I have to do. I build my timeline around it. And then I know in the following quarter, we're going to go wash, rinse, repeat, do it again. And then I need to know, has anything that I've done, are the changes that we made having an impact? Now, this is what supports us measuring it. And I always say, you can't manage what you can't measure. So figuring out a way to create that baseline and to have those measurable points of data to say, we're either getting better or we're not getting better. And so just establish your cadence, right? Figure out what is appropriate in your business and how often can you manage a program like this. The next is deploy. Obviously, you've got to now put your campaign together, send it out, prepare you know, your internal teams for feedback. I'm always, please do not do this in a silo and say, you know what, yeah, I'm little CSM today. I'm going to go deploy this NPS campaign, and then we're gonna get all this feedback, and nobody is ready for it. Please don't make that mistake. Prepare everybody, get the buy-in. You don't need, again, in this stage, again, we're talking about the initial stage, very small. You don't need global buy-in, but you need folks to support the fact that we are not only going to go solicit this feedback, but we are going to analyze it, and we're going to go take action on it. Right? And so you need people to be supportive, and it doesn't need to be everybody. Perhaps in this case, at this stage, you know what, your frontline customer facing organizations, they're the ones that are going to be involved. Maybe you've got executives who want to see the data, but they're not actively participating at this point, right? So just make sure that you're educating and that you're making folks aware of what you're doing and when you're doing it. Now that you've got some data, I would say feel like you've got about 95% of the responses that you anticipate to get in. Remember, response rates are low on solicited feedback. If you're getting a 20% response rate, you're probably doing something well. Don't feel like, wow, okay, I sent out 100 surveys and I've only gotten 25 responses. That's okay. Start with what you have. I'm always a big fan of making sure that customers know that we're going to do this in advance. So we hopefully are driving more engagement because they understand the objective of what we're trying to do and how we're going to use those insights. Hopefully at that point, they're more inclined to share. But get to a percentage and say, you know what, we feel good. We feel like we've captured the lion's share of what we're going to from this program. We're ready to go and analyze that. And once you got to that point of analyzation, again, you could be, if it's 50 responses, great, go look at it manually. Maybe just go read one by one and start to make some notes and then put together your themes there. If you get a whole bunch of data, which would be great, figure out a way to parse through that, find those themes. But at the end of the day, that is what you're looking for, right? Themes and patterns. What are people saying continuously? Or what are the things you're hearing the most of? Because again, tackling those and addressing those are what's going to drive your business forward. So that last thing there is we're going to take action. Now, I didn't want to put what the milestone was, because I don't know what it is you're driving to. So we're just going to say it's a milestone. Hopefully it's a big one for you, because if you've taken action on this, hopefully you've driven some change for your customers that is going to make a material impact on them and on their business. And that's what's most critical at the end of the day, right? You've made doing business with you easier as a result of you deploying an effective program where you not only, established your program, you listened, you responded to your customers, right? You leaned in with gratitude. You're gracious about the feedback that they took the time to give you. You've analyzed it, you found your points, and now you've put together your plan. Again, you could find 20 things that you're like, oh man, this is a lot for me to tackle. Pick one. Pick one. Don't pick 20. You will fail. So start small. Again, this slide is all about that, right? Just start somewhere. Put some wheels in motion. Design what your ultimate VOC program will look like and say, but we're starting here today, right? That one where I put those stages, so that maturation of your VOC. Print that slide out and say, you know what? Okay, here, we're starting here, and it'll take us 6 to 10 to 12 months before we can get to that next stage, but here's where we're at, and this is what our program will look like. And as long as you're doing these things and you're communicating with your customers and you're sharing your insights and you're telling them how you're evolving, you're going to drive a material impact for them. They're going to feel heard, they're going to feel validated, and you're going to be enhancing things in a way that will drive them forward in being more successful. So that's, again, my plan on starting small. I will leave you with a couple of takeaways before we move to Q&A. But first thing is collect data, insights, sentiment from everywhere. I'm a big fan of this. Listen, you might not be ready to do anything with this data, but if you can, go and capture as much of those insights as possible. In the future, it will help establish your baseline. Also, there's other things that you might be doing, other projects, other teams that might find value in that information. So I'm always a big fan. Any data that you can get access to, please go ahead, capture it, tuck it away, use it when you need it, share it with the groups that you think it's going to be relevant. So please, data, get it, put it somewhere. Super critical, super important, make sure it's clean. The next one, review your insights early and often. This is critical, right? You've got to be looking at the data. If you are capturing data, especially solicited insights and feedback, and you are not looking at it, why are you doing this? Stop, right? Don't have your customers waste their time. Please be thoughtful. They are taking time out of their day to give you feedback. Feedback is a gift. So make sure that you're looking at it and look at it often. I know, again, internally here at ClientSuccess, feedback comes in, we're all over it. Everyone's looking at G2. We're all looking at NPS. We're all looking at survey data. Make sure that you're paying attention to it. That doesn't mean it needs to be part of a comprehensive program where you're taking action on everything, but at least read it, right? Hear what they're saying. Create a plan in the future. Point 3, share your learnings. Nobody benefits from you housing all this information and keeping it to yourself, right? No good information is stored in one single channel. So disseminate it. Find little bits. I've seen one company, I thought this was super cool how they did this. They actually, from their surveys, they had a Slack channel and they would just almost do a drip campaign. They just took little sound bites from feedback and they had their marketing team just kind of feeding it into this Slack channel. So their Slack channel just kind of was always going, but with little sound bites from their customers that they were always hearing. I thought, wow, yes, it could be noisy, but I also thought it was an interesting and creative way to continuously share what customers were saying and feedback that was, being captured. So it doesn't need to be your way, find a way, but make sure that everybody who should or could have access to this information is getting that. So it allows them to make better decisions. Follow up in a timely manner. Again, anybody who's willing to give you feedback, again, feedback is a gift. Make sure that you are replying and responding, even if it is just to acknowledge that you've received it and you're looking at it, but taking some time to really make sure that you're expressing that gratitude, that you're letting them know what you intend to do with that data. If you can do something really quickly, go ahead and do that. So make sure that you are sharing that. make them know that they're heard, and let them know that not only do you appreciate it, but you're going to do something about it, and then obviously show them through action. And the last takeaway I'll leave you with is to continue to evolve. This, like every customer program that you'll design and develop, it's part of an evolutionary journey. Change is the only constant in our worlds, and it is important to make sure that you're looking at your strategy that you've put together and you're optimizing it and you're enhancing it as often as needed. Get feedback from customers on how you're managing it. Get feedback from other internal team members. Figure out what's working and what's not working, and then make the changes necessary to continue to enhance that. So these, again, not the only takeaways from today's session, but here are 5 things that I think are important for you to think about. And again, if you're not ready to do anything with the data, if you're not ready to take action, if your organization is not set up to do that, just be careful. I just don't think that you'll be successful if you're asking customers for feedback and you're not going to do anything with it. It shouldn't just be to capture sound bites to share it. It shouldn't just be to feed your egos because you know everything is working well. Hopefully it's to drive the right change for your customers at the end of the day. So just think about that. Be careful if you're soliciting for that feedback and don't have a plan of what you're going to do. So I would say put together a plan first, but hopefully this was helpful in kind of taking you through the introductory kind of steps and stages of a VOC program. We will stop here. We'll open it up for some Q&A. I know there's a lot of chat going on in the chat, which seems great. Hopefully there's some questions here as well, but I want to make sure that we've got some time for everybody to ask any questions that we have. And I've got my dear friend, Kristen, who is one of our amazing CSPs at ClientSuccess. I know that she's kind of going through things as well, and she's going to be teeing up some questions for me, so I'm ready for her. But let me start with our Q&A questions here first. Okay, so first one came from Amit. Great insights. Would you recommend any tools to automate NPS feedback into internal action items? That's great. I haven't seen a ton that would automate that. Like I said, what we do is we have integrations from our own NPS tool. And I know there's a lot out there that do it. This goes into our Slack channels, but then we also use it as part of our integrated customer success management solution here at ClientSuccess. So we actually build out our to-dos and tasks from NPS. It also triggers playbooks that we have, which we call success cycles, which tells our team how to respond to that information. So for example, if we've received a detractor response, right? So somebody who gave us something less than a 6, we'll get that data. We'll see it there in Slack in real time as it comes in. We'll be able to analyze those insights in our platform, and then we'll be able to determine what plan we want to kick off. And that will typically be in the shape of a success cycle. That would be for a detractor response, which would encourage us to go and reach out and engage with the customer to learn a bit more. So I'm sure there are tools out there. I'm less familiar with them, but like I said, I think from an NPS standpoint, that's how we've been able to operationalize it, is using our customer success management solution. And I know there's other tools out there that will support a similar workflow. So hopefully that does answer your question. We'll go to the next one. Who should own the VOC? This is an anonymous one that came in. Who should own the VOC program within an organization? I think that's a great question. I don't know that there's any one part of the organization that should own it. To be honest with you, everyone's accountable for what you capture and the learnings and the insights. In terms of ownership, I would say I have typically seen success when it is owned within the customer success organization or within the marketing organization. But if you are a product-led growth company, maybe it's your product organization. So I think I'm going to give my famous response of it depends. But I think define who the owner is important, and probably more so than determining, where that owner lives. All right, so we're gonna go to the next question. This is a little bit long, so I'll see this. All right, so our leadership team puts more weight on the small amount of feedback from our consumer, so our paying customer, but they don't use the same product. We have a mountain of feedback from our users, but have not been able to make small wins to prove out the VOC concept. User requests don't make the product roadmap because it's not tied to any revenue. We know user stickiness helps with the feature, but we don't have executive buy-in, feeling stuck. Any suggestions? This goes back to, I think, when you get to a more mature VOC program, obviously, hopefully at that point, you've got executive buy-in. I would say start small. Figure out what impact you can make with the data that you are collecting and try to package up a story. I think getting buy-in is really, I personally have been most effective in telling a story. And so if you can capture some insights and some data that can support a narrative, that would hopefully get them to understand the value of what it is that you're trying to accomplish, perhaps that would help facilitate that. I get it. Yeah, people want to tie everything to revenue, but sometimes it's not as black and white. So I think if you can find thematic, really good insights from the data that is being captured to present your case, maybe that would help to get people excited or to get them to pay attention. And hopefully that would support a broader VOC program. I wish I had a better response. I wish that people just got it and just understood the value and everyone was bought in and happy and we can all move forward, but that's sadly not the case. So like I said, try to use the data that you have to tell a story. Hopefully you get better buy-in. All right, so I've got another question here. There's another one, anonymous, but a great one. So do you follow up with customers that do not respond to NPS? If so, what's the best way to do this? So yes, and carefully are my two high level answers to that. So yes, I won't have my CSMs respond directly until we get to a certain point, or if the customer looks or is behaving a certain way, that might indicate us to do that. But typically what we do is we will reach out to customers who haven't replied and we'll kind of gently nudge them. We'll encourage them. We'll probably often give them some insight as to why we're looking to capture that feedback. That will usually get us a second wave of responses. It won't give us everybody. But then what will happen is, our customer success managers on the team are aware of who has responded and who has not. And they typically will bring that up in conversation when they're meeting with their customers. And it is a very organic one in the sense that, we were hoping to learn, more from you and understand the feedback and the sentiment of the partnership. We recently sent out a survey. We noticed that you didn't respond. Typically, customers that don't respond are a little less engaged, or there's a reason why they're not, comfortable sharing that feedback. Is there anything that you'd be willing to share with me today? And, just opening up a safe place for them to express that. Some people are like, oh man, I saw it. I didn't respond. I've been super busy. I didn't have time. And others are like, you know what? I know that you're capturing the data and I didn't feel like it being broadcasted across the company. And so I'd rather just not submit it. But if you want to hear the feedback, here it is, XYZ. So I think just creating a safe place for people to submit feedback. And this is where I think unsolicited and solicited avenues work well. NPS, like I said, is not the only channel to do this. So it's a small place to start. Figure out if there's other ways that you can go and capture that feedback. But yes, I absolutely do believe that we should follow up with customers, whether they've submitted that feedback or not. So just obviously trying to encourage them to do so, but then also addressing that elephant in the room that we haven't heard from you. And, should we be concerned? So hopefully that answers that. Dale Smith do you have any feedback on using some sort of governance task team to prioritize opportunities to take action on? What works best? That's honestly, I've not done that, just because the nature of the organizations that I've worked in didn't behave that way. But I absolutely do believe that that's a fantastic way to address this, and also to get more support and buy-in from cross-functional teams. So I would love that. If I had somebody from product, someone from, our customer facing organization, and maybe, some other team, figure out what marketing maybe, and like, let's divide and conquer and let's look at all the feedback and figure out, hey, here's our top 3. I love that idea, Dale. So no, I have not done that. But I think that would be a great approach, especially, when you get to a place where you're having a kind of a cohort, or you're maybe at that more advanced stage, maybe not the mature stage, but you're at that advanced stage of your VOC program, and you've got more buy-in and you've got people who are using that data more effectively. I think that's a great way to get everyone to support the mission and what it is that we're trying to achieve. I think sometimes when it sits in customer success, it feels like a customer success thing, and then not everyone rallies around it the same way. So I actually think that you get more buy-in and support, Dale, if you do bring in other folks from other organizations. So I think that's great. And those are the questions in the Q&A. Let's see, I think we could do probably one more. I will check what we have over here that Kristen has captured for me. Okay, so I did get a question here. Which questions do you ask customers in the listening stage of the customer journey? That's a great question. I think I did publish the questions that I ask when I interview the customers when I'm coming in, but there are also questions that we ask throughout the customer journey that are solicited points in time throughout our feedback loop. And so I'm happy to make those available as part of our assets that we'll share. Is just, here's a few samples and timelines that associate with our solicited feedback program and how we manage and tackle that. So hopefully that's helpful. I can definitely package that together as part of the assets for today's session. But that said, we are close to time, so I don't want to run over and get started on a question that I can't answer, but there are some great ones here. Maybe I'll pick apart some additional ones and we can use LinkedIn as a forum to just keep the conversation going. But I do want to just thank everyone for their time, their participation in this series. Hopefully you have found it useful. Hopefully if you've missed any, you've gone back and listened to the recordings. We have a ton of fun producing these. We get a lot of feedback from from the community that these are extremely helpful. I know that I get a lot of access requests on the templates. So I see that people are using them, or they're looking at them at least. And so hopefully that what we're doing is well received from the community, and that you all see is our selfless way of giving back. We try not to talk about client success here. When I walk through how I do the things I do, there's a ton of different tools and things you can use. I just want everyone to be successful in driving their programs forward. That said, again, thank you guys so much. We are going to be continuing with a boot camp again in January. I've got a few ideas that have been recommended for topics, but if you have topics you'd like me to run a boot camp series on, do me a favor, shoot me a message on LinkedIn. Happy to take those into consideration. There are only 4 weeks in January, so we will only be getting to 4 topics, but then again, we will be doing this again in April. So hopefully any topics we don't cover in January will pick up at the next boot camp after that. But really appreciate the engagement, really great activity in the chat there. So thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your week, and I will see and talk to you all soon.